Welcome to CIS 6115 Applied Machine Learning. This is a short unit to get you prepped for the course. And so we'll do a number of things. First, we'll just go over the overview of kind of the structure of the course. Our Each unit will be listed under learning activities here. So let's just go look at a sample unit here. Let's look at unit 2, for example. This is a typical unit. Each unit will start with a unit plan, which will have an overview of what's covered with the unit, the learning objectives of the unit, and then a checklist of what you have to do. We'll cover one or more chapters from the textbook in each unit. And for most of the chapters, we'll have what is called a notebook for these. So these are Google Collab notebooks, which is a cloud-based Python environment, which we'll be using. So I'll open that. You may have to select to have this open in Google Collab, depending on how it's set up. And this will be a notebook with some instructions and then some code that you'll run through this. And we'll introduce that in more detail soon. But most units will have one of these notebooks, and then you also want to read the chapter of the textbook that goes along with it. Now there'll be a write-up. There'll be questions in the notebooks. So each unit you'll have a write-up you'll have to complete, and then so there'll be questions and then answers you have to do. Just nothing too, I don't think, complicated. Just kind of to make sure you're going and actually doing and paying attention to the notebooks and the materials here. So this will be really graded more participation, that you're doing the work and you're covering it and you're covering material for that. So you have to do a write-up for each chapter, just answering the simple questions that go through that. And then each unit will have a little mini project, and this is a little more interesting, I guess. I'll look at it more closely for grading. Let me get to the right account here. And we'll open that up in Google Colab also. So again, each mini project will be a Python notebook with some starting code there, but you'll have to do more of your own coding here and setup here, and then you also have to create your own write-up. There won't be any generally predefined questions, specific things you'll have to just describe. So there'll be some details on what you have to try to do in the little mini project and do it. They shouldn't be too long, because again, we're going to want to do one of these a week for each unit. But they will take a little bit of focus on your part. Now, to help you out throughout this, we'll be using our discussion. Well, here's my cat, who's joining me today in the recording. So if you've been hearing her. All right, so sorry about that. Now there'll be discussion posts required every week, and you can use these to help get answers to questions and answer other people's questions. We're kind of going to use this as kind of a mini version of Stack Exchange, which is a well-known tech website for asking questions on code and stuff like that. So in the discussion, again, down here in the discussion area, there'll be a discussion section for each unit, and then you can post your questions and answer other people's questions here for that. So feel free to post segments of code or your whole code segments or your results to that, and ask for questions or suggestions, or if you've found something out, post the hint there, and we'll try to use the discussion area for exchanging that information. I'll be monitoring that also, and try to provide some suggestions for students also. So if you're stuck somewhere, check the discussion postings area first and see if something's there. So this is all listed in the unit plan, and then there's also links down below here to the discussion area and where you assignment for where you turn in your notebook write-ups and your mini project in each unit. So that's kind of the structure of every unit and how the course will be structured. And again, I did show you a link to Google Collab. We'll be using this cloud-based Python environment. It doesn't require any installations for this. If you want to at some point set up your own environment on your own machine, particularly if you have a fast machine with a GPU, we'll talk about how you can use Anaconda to install Python and Jupyter notebooks and run these on your own machines. But again, everything will be you can do with Google Colab. We'll also look at some other environments from Amazon and Microsoft that provide the same sort of features as this. So in this unit, pre-unit, we're actually going to be kind of skimming over the first 3 chapters. Much of this, chapter 1 is material you should have seen in your earlier courses. Chapter 2 is just a sample project to kind of give you an idea of this. And again, much of this stuff, the idea of how you set up a machine learning or data project is you've probably covered before. And chapter 3 is we'll cover that kind of lightly. Most of that material has actually been integrated in to chapters 4 and 5 in the next unit. So just like other units, I have some simple unit objectives here in your checklist. So let's just go through the checklist here. So again, we have the syllabus linked in here. You should be looking over the syllabus here. It has my contact information. Again, my name is Tom Gibbons. This is my email address. This is my phone number. Okay, yes, this is my phone number. I had the wrong phone number here. This is my cell phone number. You can call and text that. Generally, I'm available anytime between 8 in the morning and 10 o'clock at night. Weekends are fine too. Office hours, if you want to meet, well, I'll set up some standard office hours, but again, you can just text me or email me and we can set up a Zoom meeting anytime, day or night. Well, within reason, of course. Okay, the rest of this material, we talk about what you'll set up as far as assessments go. You'll have discussions every week, every unit, a notebook and the write-up for the notebooks, and then a mini project. So these will be every week. And then we'll have a final applied project towards the end of the course. Most of the rest of the stuff is similar to what's expected in the rest of these courses in our Masters in Applied Data Analytics. Here's a schedule of what we'll be doing. We're trying to cover a fair amount of material. I really enjoy neural networks and deep learning, and there's a lot of work these days in machine learning for that. So I'm going to try to go a little more quickly over the first part of the material, the traditional learning, and focus to give us more time to focus on deep learning and the newer techniques that have done really stand out in the last 10 years. For machine learning. So that's kind of our background here. The other thing you should do this unit is to get a copy of the textbook. You can get it from the St. Scholastica textbook link or any other source. It's also available through the O'Reilly subscription if you're part of that. We just need make sure you get the second edition of the textbook. The first edition used a different set of code than this one, so we need that second edition of the textbook. A used version, electronic version, any of those are fine. Just get some sort of version of the textbook. So again, what you should be doing here is skimming over the chapter 1 of the text. Much of that stuff you've already seen before. So chapter 1 is just talking about the machine learning landscape, talks about what machine learning is, kind of just general introduction stuff. There's some good information here, but again, I think you've seen some of this stuff before as far as ways machine learning or data analytics can be used. It does introduce the concept of supervised and unsupervised learning here, and goes over some examples. But a lot of this is really introductory stuff, which we'll be covering in more detail. We'll have a whole chapter on unsupervised learning and lots of stuff on supervised learning and stuff like that. So this is a good overview, but again, I think you may have seen some of this stuff in your earlier courses in this program. Chapter 2 is a sample project, and here I'll introduce a machine learning a notebook, and there'll be a separate video that'll go over that for you within this notebook link. So you'll want to open that up and watch that video for that. So again, this will open up a simple notebook that'll go over some of the code, and there'll be a video there for you to watch for that. And chapter 3 goes over classification, and much of this material I've pushed off into chapters 4 and 5 and integrated there. You may want to just look at the chapter. So the chapter does introduce the MINST data set, which is a well-known data set made of handwritten digits like this. And so it does explain that, and we'll be using that in a number of places throughout the course. So that's not a bad thing to kind of look at. But it has a bunch of code here, which again we'll be reviewing later on in chapters 4 and 5 for this. One thing to note is that the textbook tends to have a fair amount of math and advanced code in it, and so we will try to be selective on what sections we want, given that this is more of an applied course. So when we go through these sections, so often the author will present some concept and then look at the mathematical theory behind it or derive this mathematically. And so in those areas, we'll skip over those more theoretical mathematical derivations of the things and really just focus on how we use these concepts in applied machine learning. So for example, things like this raw curve, we won't be covering that in the course, and how it's set up. We'll be looking at more other ways of monitoring this sort of stuff. So again, most of this Unit 3 stuff, the important parts of it, I've integrated in the future chapters. So you feel free to skim over this section, but again, you don't have to worry about that material until, and I've selected the important parts and put them into Units 4 and 5 coming up. So that's a brief introduction to the course. Hopefully you'll enjoy it. Now, one other thing I do want you to do is do a quick introduction, the normal standard introductions in the student discussion area. So do some sort of introduction, say something about yourself, and introduce yourself, and then you can check in with the other students in the course.